the Golden Stallion, the Man of Tomorrow, Savzu, the Rated R radio star, in a car. We're actually recording this
in a car, making poems.
Yeah.
And he doesn't even know them.
Doing a little car cast. I know some people are rather fond of those, or either doing them or listening to them. But anyway, I don't think I've ever really done this before. I don't recall ever doing any kind of Sovryn Tech Patreon or otherwise from a car.
We've never done it. I've suggested it.
Yeah, we've thought about it.
I don't think you wanted to do it because of technical constraints or whatever reason. But yeah, here we are. I'm glad you brought this up, Brian. This was your idea.
Yeah, I thought this would be good.
And I was totally game for it, so I'm super excited to do this.
Absolutely. And of course, Sovryn Tech patrons are recognizing the voice of the lovely and hyper-intelligent Dr. Stephanie Murphy.
Hi!
And we are doing another Relationship Rhombus Show. I like to do these once a month. This will be November 2017.
Relationship Rhombus on wheels.
That's right. Because, and I
what
call
do you
it
call a rhombus on wheels?
Rhombus on wheels. Yeah, I don't know how well that would work. Well, actually, treads would. Well, never mind. So anyway, of course, this is where you can send in your relationship questions, and I get quite a few of them anyway that are usually for like a Patreon Q&A or something. But I was like, I'm getting so many of these. Why don't I just turn it into, like a show? And of course, Stephanie co-hosts Sex and Science Hour with me, and this is the kind of thing that we do all the time, is talk about this kind of stuff. So it's a lot of fun. So we got a few questions here, Stephanie, to get into. We got kind of the sun getting in our eyes here, so
that's the problem with a car cast,
Yeah, if it's not at night, or if it's, I don't know, there's always little distractions. But that would be kind of interesting, like if no, I'm not going to jinx it, never mind. So, I was going to say, something terrible happened. We got a recording.
What the fuck? Don't say that.
These micro SD cards are indestructible. Do you realize that? Like, they're practically indestructible.
We don't need a black box here.
All right, we don't need a black box. That's right. We were listening to black boxes. I'll tell you, music, I think the last Relationship Rhombus show that we did, we were asked, I think, what's good music to fuck to or something like that. I'll tell you, black box. People might not remember Black Box. They had this amazing album come out in 1991 called Dreamland. They had another one in 95, I think.
That's good music to fuck to if you're in a gay disco in the bathroom and you're a man fucking another man. Right?
Sure.
Am I wrong? No, I don't think I'm wrong.
I don't know. I could strike it up. I mean, I think it could work.
It literally reminds me of going to summer camp as a kid and taking these interpretive dance classes, where a bunch of white Jewish girls were doing hip hop dance. That's what that
reminds you of. All right.
I'm not going to be fucking to that anytime soon, but I appreciate how gay it is. I like
it's
that.
Pure 90s. That's for damn sure.
Mm-hmm.
So, anyway, hopefully, I will say this. Hopefully, the audio quality here is pretty good because we're just running this raw. We're raw dogging this.
We should do the silence thing.
So
we record some silence.
We'll do that at the end if we remember. But
okay.
Anyway, regardless. So why don't we get into some of these questions and see how long we can make this go?
Yeah, let's do it.
In fact, in honor of a car cast, why don't we open up with a question about a car? Some of these questions I have shortened for brevity and perhaps a little bit of clarity. Sometimes clarity doesn't come through, but that makes it more fun of a podcast. So, all right, first question here, like I said, in honor of it being in a car cast, I think this one kind of fits. Sex in a car seems really impractical, even in a van or SUV. Thoughts?
Yeah, it is impractical. I mean, I feel like the only reason that you have sex in a car is because you have to. That's pretty much most of the times that I've had sex in a car, which hasn't been that many times, it's been because we had to. It was we were in college, living situation, living in a dorm, you got roommates. Where else are you going to go to be alone? When
right.
you had sex in a car, Brian, it was because you lived with your parents and you were 16 or 17 or whatever, and you weren't allowed to bring girls back to the house or whatever.
They made it very clear I couldn't fuck in the house, and so I bought the biggest car I could find. The biggest SUV I could find.
Right? See, necessity is the mother of invention.
This is true.
And now, Brian, you and I have gotten it on in a car, in a large, well, not really a car, a large vehicle. And that's been, kind of for fun, but it's like, it's not something we do all the time because it loses its appeal. It's like, it's like a novelty, it takes you back to those days when you had to do it, and it's a little nostalgic, but it's not really like a kind of sex that you'd want to do on the regular unless you had to.
All right. Well,
that's my opinion on it. I agree with the question asker. It is impractical.
Yeah, I mean, I think in today's cars, it's impractical. Like, I'll tell you. So I've been against. I mean, I get it. I understand like the appeal to having, to driving a car with a manual transmission, to having the stick shift and everything in the middle and all that stuff. Like, it seems like though every car today, stick shift or not, like there's some center console.
Yeah, that's right.
In between the driver,
the bucket seats,
right, or the couch style seats, and it's really crazy because, like, I mean, the reason I never got into driving cars with a manual transmission is because honestly, like, maybe I wanted a blowjob while I was, driving or something, just straight up, and you can't do that with that. And also today, like the back seats of most modern cars, I mean, I got to say your car. Like, actually, it's pretty impressive.
Great back seat.
Yeah, that's
Toyota
a very
impressive. RAV4 is a great car.
This is true. I mean, this has a very impressive back seat, but the average car now, SUV, van, or whatever, it doesn't have an impressive back end, or back seat or something like that.
Right.
To where you could really, like, I think you could even practically do it. And then you have the other issue of size. I mean, like, I'm a big guy.
Yep, 6'1", tons of fun.
Thank you. So,
and I'm 5'8" and really great. So
I'll say so. Right. I mean, so that can kind of be impractical. Like, I think it's hilarious how I don't know, you go to Pornhub or something, and they have like all these fake taxi videos or some kind of shit like that. And yeah, I get it.
Yeah, that's bullshit. But that's really hard to do.
Right. There's no way that they're comfortable with that. Really. So yeah, I understand. I like it. I enjoy it. And there is certainly, like, I think there is a bit of an appeal to it, but it's not something that I'd want to have to do regularly.
Yeah, like, I mean, I've had moments where I was getting intimate with somebody in the car, like making out or something, let's just say, and we wanted to take it further, and if there was a bed available, like, we would always choose the bed over the car, right?
Oh, sure,
it's like, it's kind of your second choice, and you can make it fun, you can make it erotic, but in and of itself, I don't know, I don't see the appeal too much.
Yeah, I think if we were talking about cars like 30, 40 years ago, it would be a very different situation. Like, I used to drive around a 73 Ford LTD, and, people would ride in it. Not that we'd be fucking in it, not that I didn't do that, but we'd just be riding in it, and everybody would say, oh, it's like you're driving a couch, because it was just so comfortable, it was so smooth, there was so much room, you could just relax, put your feet up, whatever. And also, so if you had that, I think people would feel differently. There's a reason it was so popular to do in the 50s and 60s, and probably even before that, because these cars were, they were like yachts on the road, And then you also had, the other thing that I enjoy, which the question asker wasn't really going towards, but I'll shoot it, is fucking on the hood of a car. You can't do that today. You'll bash in the front end. I mean, today's cars,
that's true.
If you hit a pebble with today's cars, your front end's just crunched. I mean, it's over,
Well, that's a little bit of an exaggeration.
A little bit, but not much.
Yeah, they don't build them like they used to, that's true.
Yeah, I mean, I used to have, like, literally, the last car I could remember really doing this for, besides my LTD. So I had a 94 Lincoln Town Car, and the front end on that was shy of 6 feet. Like, I could lay down on it really comfortably, and a gal could get on top, and like, it wouldn't dent in, there wouldn't be any noises, this was full metal, and it was, it's practical, but it was practical, that's the point I want to make. So I think fucking in the car 40, 50 years ago, maybe, was practical. Today, no, it's a joke, and even in vans and these other things, I don't think it exactly works, and like, the seats aren't comfortable for it, it's just a pain in the ass.
Now, if it's part of your fetish, it might be a different story.
Well, right.
Like, because I think some people have a fetish for cars. Like, some people just fetishize cars in general. Like,
yes.
They just think they're sexy.
Yes.
Independent of who's who's with them in the car or whatever, they just like the aesthetic of a car. They like the idea of being king of the road or queen of the road, right? Like, it's your own space. That's your car. You can go wherever you want. The power's all in your hands.
Oh, yeah.
And maybe you could even get some oral while you're driving or something like that. Or maybe you could take somebody you like into the movies, the drive-in movies, or on a overlook or something like that, or a state park, and just be alone with them in the back seat, even if you don't have the ability to do that at your own apartment or something like that.
Right.
And that's very sexy, in a way, especially for some people. So if you're somebody who likes that, then yeah, you don't mind the impracticalities of car sex. You like it. It's part of your
identity.
It's all woven in there together. So, if you like it, more power to you. It's not my particular fetish.
Yeah.
And it doesn't really overcome the impractical sides for me.
Yeah. All right. So, can I add on a question?
Of course.
All right. So, have you ever like, and you don't have to answer this, and I can even edit it out. Have you ever got it on with, like, have you ever had penis in vagina while, say, either, I can't imagine it with you driving, but with the guy driving?
No. Not with the guy driving.
All right.
I have had sex with a guy in a car, in the back seat, and in the front seat, but I have not had intercourse while somebody was driving. That is just fucking insane to me. And again, if it's part of your fetish, if you like risk and you want to take a fucking risk, you might break your neck, but that's pretty risky. And for some people, that really turns them on. For me, I really don't need that.
Yeah.
I can get turned on without that risk. Thank you very much. Sex is enough of a risk. I'm a little bit risk averse myself.
There you go.
So.
I have, while I was driving, but it was like on a back road. Like, I would never do that, like in like any kind of traffic situation. That would just be foolish.
How many times did you do it? Just once, to just say that you did?
Oh, no, I did it a lot.
Really?
Oh, yeah, but...
Wow, I'm surprised you're still alive. Good job,
well,
Ryan.
but
You
again...
didn't get any Darwin Awards for that, somehow.
Well, again, it was on very back roads, middle of the night kind of shit like that.
Mm-hmm. And how old were you and the woman at the time you were having sex
She
with?
was tiny, I was 20-something, and...
Okay, so both stupid.
Sure.
Okay.
But, I mean, the thing is that also at the time, like, you could do that in a car. Like, there's no way you cannot even, I don't even think you can really do that in a modern car. It's just not possible, So, again, a lot of this stuff, a lot of I think even the fetishization and a lot of the fantasies, I guess is more the term I'm looking for, a lot of the fantasies around it really are all based around a completely different time frame of cars.
Yeah,
so,
I definitely agree with that. I think cars are getting less sexy. I'm with you on that.
Yeah.
Now, what do you think when all the cars become self-driving cars? Are there going to be people just fucking in the cars rampantly and not watching the ads that Google wants you to watch?
That's an awesome thought. I don't know. And you'd think it'd be a prime opportunity. And I'll say why I don't know. Because it makes all the sense in the world to do that. Okay. Especially because, the purpose, in my opinion, the reason that Google has been developing self-driving cars, okay, is because there is a time frame where a lot of people in the world are not looking at their phone or their computer. That time frame is when they are driving, and some people have crazy commutes that they have to go on.
Yeah.
Okay, so now, if you can have the car do the driving and then turn that entire windshield into a screen for YouTube, suddenly Google can make a shit ton more money. Okay, theoretically.
Yeah.
So I think that's the real reason why Google is interested in self-driving cars, because there is time where you are not looking at screens, and that is absolutely unacceptable to them.
Okay, so YouTube is going to have to get into the porn business and buy a major porn purveyor.
Well, here's the thing. No, I mean, you could, your car could work like a Chromecast. You could push Pornhub or something to it, or whatever the browser's running, something like that. So you could watch porn while fucking. I mean, some people like to do that. They watch porn while they're getting it on. And, I mean, you could at the very least be jerking off, while you're driving somewhere, right?
Yeah, but if it's not your car, like, someone else is jerking off in that car right before you. That's gross. Nobody wants to think about that.
Well, so
the whole car is going to have to come with a plastic layer over it that you just peel off and dispose of.
Well, they need to be self-cleaning and self-driving. Now,
right, yeah.
but here's the problem. All of the self-driving cars that I've seen are very small. this whole problem we're describing, how it doesn't work in modern cars.
It's all environmentally efficient.
Yeah, it's like, I mean, I remember seeing in magazines, like you look in old issues of Popular Mechanics and stuff like this, which I actually recommend doing. It's an amazing view of what people thought the future would be like. And I'm talking Popular Mechanics from 40, 50 years ago. And in that, you see where there's a future where it's self-driving cars, but people are like in seemingly like limousines, you know, where they are, I mean, like it's like a dining room in the back of that damn thing, you know, and that's not the future that we're getting, you know. And again, really, I don't think the people that are actually pushing the technology, they're not interested in you having a fun, relaxing time. They want you to be looking at a screen that entire time. That is what matters, is that they are having your attention.
Because if you're fucking, you're also not looking at a screen, right?
Well, I mean,
you're looking into your partner's eyes. You're not looking at a screen. We can't have that.
Right. That's a problem. So they're going to have to do something. Google is going to have to put an end to sex as well somehow.
I think they're doing a pretty good job of that.
That's true.
You know?
That's true. Yeah. Anyway, so, you know, here's a quick one. I mean, how about a limousine? Have you ever done it in a limousine?
No, I've never really ridden in a limousine.
Oh, we got to resolve
except, like, cheap limousines to go to the airport before there were Ubers and coaches and shuttles.
No. See, limos, it can work because you have that. You can at least do doggy style in the limo.
Yeah.
Like, there's advantage. All right.
I've had guys kind of grope me in the back of a taxi, but that wasn't sexy.
Yeah, I was going to say, that sounds seedy.
Yeah,
like,
it was seedy. It was very seedy.
All right. Well, I'm going to write this down.
All right.
Sex
take
in
me in a limo, yeah.
Okay, yeah, no, absolutely.
I'm up for that.
All right.
I'm up for doing anything with you, Brian.
Oh.
I want to go on all kinds of adventures with you.
Oh, I love you. Adventure is what life's all about.
That's right, yeah.
Okay. All right, how about we move on to another one here?
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's see. All right, let's do this one. This is kind of funny. Then we have some serious ones. We have some ones that actually had a lot of responses in the Facebook group that I want to get to.
Cool.
But I want to kind of even it out. I don't want it to end on a downer.
All right, even it out.
Yeah, all right. So here's kind of a funny one. I have a girl who's really nice and all, but she never wants to leave and do stuff outside of the house. She just wants to stay in and cuddle while a movie is playing.
Oh, this is so relatable.
I've tried everything, but I'm starting to suspect she has a phobia about cars. Wow, that's funny. A phobia about cars and unfamiliar places, but I can't understand why. I start to think, like, does she really like me, or is she embarrassed about seeing me in public? Being seen with him in public. Is she just using me for jaw scratches, or perhaps even worse, free kitty kibble and clean water in litter boxes? Maybe it's a cat that he's talking about. Maybe it's a cat.
Yeah, it sounds like it is a cat.
This is coming from somebody who likes to crack jokes about these questions. So
yeah, I can't solve your puss problems for you, man. Maybe your cat's agoraphobic. Maybe you need to give your cat some antidepressants. How about that? But slip some Prozac in that kitty litter.
You know, it's interesting though. Cats don't really like cars, do they? Not like dogs. Not like horses.
I mean, I'm kind of. Yeah, I guess they don't. Well, I don't think horses like cars either. Well, first of all, you can't fit a horse in a car. You have to put it in a trailer.
Well, sorry, I don't. Yeah, yes. I don't mean in a car. I mean on the road.
Yeah.
Like horses don't seem to mind so much being. Maybe get a horse. There's a
there
suggestion. Get a horse.
Or get a dog that loves to go in its crate and then just pick up the crate. And you can be a female dog. Take your bitches with you.
Whoa.
You have 5 bitches in the back seat.
Whoa. What was the
saying?
Crates. What was the saying we heard the other day? 2 bitches in the back of a Ferrari. Ain't nothing good ever come out of that.
Yeah. Yeah. I believe it was in the back of a Bentley, but...
Oh, that's what it was. It wasn't a Ferrari, it was a Bentley.
Yeah.
2 bitches in the back of a Bentley, ain't nothing good ever come out of that.
Yeah, that's right.
And of course, I mean dogs. All right, so... anything else on that one? We can't really solve that issue, can we?
Well, like, if it was a human, like, before we got to the punchline, okay,
I
was thinking, okay, when you stay in with this woman, does she like to cuddle and watch movies and have sex? Like, is it Netflix and chill? Or is it just cuddling and no sex? Because that kind of makes a difference. Like, if she's having sex with you, she likes you. She just doesn't want to go out. Right?
Right.
If she's not having sex with you and doesn't want to be seen with you in public, that sounds like she doesn't really like you that much. I'm just saying. Or maybe she's cheating on somebody, I don't know. Or maybe she is agoraphobic, or maybe something like that. It's probably... It's a hypothetical situation, so I'm not even going to bother to speculate, but...
Fair enough.
That would be one of the deciding factors for me, is whether you're having sex.
Fair enough. All right, so I just want you to know, I just want to apologize. I just blew ass, and we're in a car. And this is,
okay, thank you for announcing that on the podcast.
All right.
I would have forgotten about it in 2 seconds, but now it's going to go down in history and infamy.
There it is. So...
I can't even actually smell anything, so I think you're good.
Hey,
I think we're all good, Brian.
Is there that hint of rose or lavender?
No,
that's
no,
me.
but there's also not that hint of egg salad.
A touch of jasmine?
No.
Okay.
No jasmine, but no egg salad either, so that's good.
All right. Well, let's get into a little bit of a serious one here, shall we?
Okay, sure.
This one, this is from the Sovryn Tech Uncensored Facebook group. Not that I need to, because every once in a while I'll ask the question. I'll say, "Hey, we're going to record a Relationship Rhombus Show in a couple days. If you have any questions, get them in get them in below." There are a lot of responses to this one, and I will keep them anonymous. But I thought the responses were really solid, so I actually copied and pasted them as well by some very brilliant women, actually, in response to this. So let's see here. The question was, and it's actually a short question, but there's a lot of clarification.
Can we do a moment of silence so we have the road noise before we...
Sure.
Okay.
Well, let's do it later, because then I have to edit in the middle.
We're about to get off the highway. So.
All right. Moment of silence.
Okay, I think that's good.
All right, I'll see that in the recording.
Okay.
It'll be such a big gap. Okay, so here's the question. How the fuck do people deal with financial stuff in a relationship? Is it never not stressful? And I have, there's clarification, so I'm going to read that.
Yes, I would. I think I did ask for some clarification about that.
You specifically responded, great question. Can you be more specific? Like how to decide who pays for what to merge your money, or when to merge your money, crypto, etc. And the person responded, the OP, I'll say, I guess we're sort of in this weird state of having our money sort of separate, but sort of together, and it makes it super complicated. Now he wants access to my accounts for budgeting purposes, which, I don't know, I guess is reasonable, but it makes me uncomfortable. I like to spend my money how I want to without anyone else's input, and I don't know if that's unreasonable of me. Also, our financial situation is extra weird because I have some money because of some shit, so even though I'm not working right now, except for the 24/7 work of raising kids, which, Sally, I'm breaking in for a second.
You're working.
You're working, baby.
Yeah,
I mean,
working hard.
Yeah, you're doing it. I still pay for more than half of our living expenses, so it's obviously not a typical situation.
And this is a married woman who's married to a guy, right?
I don't know if she's married. I'm not sure.
Oh, I thought they were married. Okay, whatever.
Yeah, that I'm not sure on. There's another...
They have some kids together, and they're in a domestic partnership.
Yes.
Right.
Okay. There's a little more here. I want to read this. I guess when it comes down to it, we have really different priorities and values, and what seems to trigger a lot of arguments about how we should be spending our money. And at the root of it, we just have really different personalities, and it's hard to manage sometimes. I guess a lot of it is a matter of just needing to work on being able to see things from each other's point of view. I don't know. Now, there was a bunch of responses, or let's see, she has one more comment that I want to read. Just to be clear, he doesn't want access to my accounts, so he doesn't want access to my account so he can spend money. It's more that he wants to tell me how to spend it, or how not to spend it, rather. And I don't mean to say that we have different values in huge ways. It's small things. He spends money on things that I think are stupid. I spend money on things he thinks are stupid. The biggest thing is that I would rather spend money on experiences than on stuff. So I think that covers the bulk of her clarifications on all of that. So,
great.
I mean, what do you think about this?
To the husband or the partner who wants to tell his partner how or how not to spend money, you can't impose a budget on someone else.
Right.
Especially if you have different ideas about what the budget should be like.
Yeah.
If you have different values about money, it does make it really hard to have this type of relationship with somebody where you're essentially sharing your money and you have some shared responsibilities of things that you both have to pay for, like kids.
Right.
So obviously it's great to think about that really carefully before you get into a relationship with somebody where you are sharing money or merging your finances in some way. And those relationships are typically when you're living together, when you're married, or when you're having kids, or some combination of those.
Sure.
So that's all well and good to say to somebody who's not already in the situation, but they're already in the situation with very different values about what their budget should be like. Now, like I said, you can't impose a budget on someone else. A budget is really best if you impose it on yourself.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, you can sit down and say, all right, here's how much I get paid each month by my employer. I need to cover these bills. I have this much left over to play with, save, or, put away or whatever, or buy Bitcoin.
Yeah.
And so this is what I need to do in order to make my finances all add up. It's one thing to say that to yourself, but if you're trying to say that to somebody else who doesn't necessarily agree,
Right.
that they would like to spend that money on a vacation or going out to dinner instead of saving it for later or something like that, or buying crypto.
Sure.
It's going to be really hard to persuade them that your idea of how you should spend the money is best. Now, to the woman who asked the question, I think this goes for any gender, but she happens to be a woman who's raising kids, and she says, like, well, I'm not really working right now, as though maybe that gives her partner some right to tell her how to spend her own money. No, it's your money. And anytime a partner is wanting to control how you spend your money, especially if you don't agree with the ways that they want you to spend your money, that is starting to get a little bit controlling. And I'm not saying your husband is abusive or anything like that, but it is something that abusive partners do. It's actually one of the very common things that abusive partners do is have tight control of how their partner spends their money.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe even gives them an allowance or something. I know a lot of guys who give their wives an allowance.
Yeah.
Like, how condescending is that?
Yeah, or admittedly, I've heard a lot of words the other way around.
Wives give their husbands an allowance, and that's condescending too. I mean,
you get to buy one DVD a week. I remember people like that years ago. Anyway,
now maybe it works for some people. If you're married to somebody and you say, look, partner, I've got no self-control. I want you to help me achieve my long-term financial goals, which I know are good for me in the long run, but I have trouble resisting buying things in the short term. Mm-hmm. So I want you to help me by meting out how much money I spend and keeping me accountable. That's one thing. But the question asker is not saying that to her partner. She's not asking for his input about how she should spend her money. Right. He's just giving the input unsolicited. So that's the difference to me. So I think if it's your money, no matter how you got it, whether you worked for it, inherited it, got it because of a settlement, whatever, it sounds like you had some kind of situation like that.
Sure.
No matter how you got it, it's your money, and they don't get to tell you how to spend your own money. I'm sorry. As long as you're meeting your basic obligations to your kid, and your kids.
Yeah. I mean, and it sounds like she's paying the bulk of the bills and whatever else anyway.
More than half of the bills, yes. I agree.
Yeah.
So especially if she's paying more than half of the bills, he doesn't get to tell her how to spend her own money.
No, right. Yeah, so, I mean, something to keep in mind is I think there's a lot of cultural baggage going on here, and I'm not saying that it's conscious or maybe, or unconscious, it's just there. Like in Japan, women are generally in charge of money. Mm-hmm. I mean, like straight up, they will absolutely tell with no uncertain terms and with culturally, with respect from the, supposedly anyway, from the man, she will call the shot as far as how the money gets handled, what gets done with it, etc. Right. And it's been that way for thousands of years. Mm-hmm. This is not anything new. I mean, that's just how it is in Japan. Now in America, a lot of Americans hear that and they think that that's very strange. But it's a system that's worked fairly well for that country.
I actually think in the world, women control the majority of the purchasing power.
Sure.
Of the world economy, I guess.
Sure.
But, of course, culturally, especially in America and the Western world, men tend to have greater earning power because of the gender wage gap.
Right.
And men earn more money than women.
Yep.
So who has the financial power? It's complicated. It's
Yeah.
hard to say.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, so you and I, we keep our finances separate.
Yes.
You know, and that's something, you know, personally, like, I mean, I've been married, I've gotten divorced and all that, and really, like, that's the path that I would like to continue to go. That doesn't mean that, like, you know, I'm not amenable to different situations in the future or something. But my bigger concern here with this, okay, and I think the reason that if it's a shared account or if it's separate accounts, I think the reason that it'll work with a couple or whatever the amount of people in the relationship are, is if their goals are the same. And you and I, right, Stephanie, in my opinion, I think you'd agree, you know, our life goals in general are very much on point. Like they're in the same direction in a million ways.
I agree. And we may keep our money separate. However, we both contribute equally to supporting our joint household. Exactly.
Yeah. And I mean, and there's a lot of, I mean, it's really kept very equal, or, you know, as equal as we can make it.
Yeah. And that was something that was important to both of us from the beginning of our relationship.
Right.
So we implemented it, and I think it's worked, you know, pretty well for us.
Sure. So now what I thought was particularly interesting with this question isn't so much, you know, should we join accounts? Should we not? Whatever. It's when she specifically said, and this is a crux for me in this whole, you know, question about relationships and money, and do you keep it separate? How do you handle all of that? And it comes down to where she said, the biggest thing is that I would rather spend money on experiences than on stuff.
Yeah, that's important.
And that's probably because, like we were saying, Stephanie, like, I mean, you know, we keep our finances separate, but it's not necessarily an issue because, I mean, we have pretty much the same goals. So, you know, like I don't think that's a big deal, but this I don't think is a small deal. Like, I feel like the question asker is saying, well, it's not that huge of a deal. I think it's a big deal. If you're more interested in experiences than stuff, and hey, I'm with you. Like, I'm all about, you know, going for the experiences and everything, having the memories. You know, memories, as long as, you know, they're memorable enough, can last a lot longer than any kind of stuff can. You know, what not to quote the Bible, but what moth and rust can destroy. You know what I mean? So...
Not to quote the Bible, but I'm going to quote.
But I'm going to do it anyway. Yeah.
So, I don't know. Okay, you can finish your thought, but I'll jump in afterwards if you want.
Sure. Yeah, but I think this is the thing that actually has to be resolved. And she said, you know, she's like, well, you know, he thinks I spend money on stupid things. I think he spends it on stupid things, back and forth. But really, there's a completely different philosophy here, I think. And not to say that they can't be complementary in certain ways. But yeah, there needs to be either an understanding of, hey, this is what I'm into. I'm into having experiences more than I'm into having shit, you know, or into having stuff. And then, you know, you kind of work around that. Or, I mean, maybe that's something that just never really, like, coalesces. And then maybe, honestly, the relationship doesn't really coalesce. But I think this is a huge deal. I mean, it's a pretty well-known fact that statistically, most relationships end because of money.
It's the most common reason why people fight in relationships.
Right.
Typically, you hear it in the context of married relationships.
Yes.
And I can certainly see that, but I think it's not just marriage. I think it's actually also, like, people who are in domestic partnerships, in any of those ties that I mentioned that bind before. If you live together, if you're married, or if you have kids, or any of the above, in any combination.
Yeah, and it's not just like, well, this person needs to have a lot of money or I can't love them or something like that. It really does come down to this philosophy that this question asker, I think, brought up. Do you spend it on stuff or do you spend it on experiences? You know, if you have, like, particularly limited resources. Of course, there's people, you know, if you're Mark Zuckerberg, you can buy both. But
money is a super, triggering issue for a lot of people, too.
Sure.
Like, especially if you grew up poor or if you've ever experienced significant poverty or, like, just a lack of resources that prevented you from doing vital things or things that you just wanted to do, it can be a really sore spot for a lot of people, and it really affects how you view money as an adult. And so, I don't know, I mean, I think maybe if you're the type to, like, for example, before you get married, want to do marriage counseling or something like that. A lot of people do pre-counseling, like, before they get married. In fact, some churches require it. If you're going to do that, I mean, why not read a little bit about money and examine your own attitudes toward money? Have a lot of conversations with your partner about it. I mean, because I think it's worth spending a little time on that, because it can be such a big problem for so many couples.
Yeah, I mean, talking about money it's a hard thing. Like, this is something else I know there's research on, that people will talk more about sexual abuse that's happened to them in their lives. I mean, molestation, whatever else. They'll talk about drugs. They'll talk about all these other things that are considered, anathema in society before they're willing to talk about finances.
Wow, and that says a lot, because people aren't exactly raring to talk about sexual trauma,
Right. But I mean, they will admit to all kinds of other crap, but like money. I mean, and I get, I can understand it. I mean, it can be a scary subject.
There's a lot of shame and judgment around it. There's a lot of expectation. There's a lot of, like, gender stuff that's tied to it, right? Like, if you're, for example, if you're a man, grow up as a man, you might have learned your whole life that there's this enormous pressure on you to be some kind of financial provider. As a woman, you might feel a conflict between being a mother and being somebody who earns money. There's all kinds of issues that tie into it. Like, I think money kind of has tentacles that reach into other areas that would affect a relationship a lot. So I think it's worth spending some time discussing. And even if you're already married, like, this is actually, I'm glad you made that point, Brian, because what I was going to say to kind of wrap this up was, like, maybe it's worth, spending some time just by yourselves, or maybe with a professional like a counselor or something. It's worth having some conversations about your attitudes about money, like really defining what is most important to you in terms of your finances, your financial goals, your expectations for each other, how much money you're going to contribute to the relationship, what you view as shared resources, what you don't. I mean, some people get together and they have neither of them has any money, and so it's like no problem and they don't even talk about it. But then, maybe they acquire some significant resources while they're married, and then it can lead to disputes. So I think the more you talk about it, the better. At least you'll get an understanding of where each other are at. And if you don't have shared goals, how do you reconcile that, right? If you still want to be partners in life, but you're not exactly on the same page about how you want to spend or save or what your financial plan is, then what do you do about that? How can you negotiate with each other to get to a solution that's best for everybody, including any kids that are involved?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's the place to start, is recognize with each other, this is a tough subject, and I think asking the question alone is this woman recognizing that it is a very tough subject, obviously, but recognize just how tough it is, just how hard it is, that it might be the hardest thing to talk about. And then, I think somehow you have to reconcile, or not have to, but somehow you'll want to reconcile what you want to do with money and what the other person wants to do with money. And if there's no reconciliation there, well, I don't know, I mean, that's...
Yeah, I mean, money is really a tool that allows you, like, yes, you need it to survive, but it's a tool that allows you to do certain things in life. And it's kind of an interesting thing to game out, I guess, if you have the luxury of thinking about it that way. Like,
sure.
It lets you do things. And so, okay, what do you want to do, and how do you need to arrange your finances so that you can ultimately live the happiest life that you can, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And if your idea of a happy life differs from your partner, well, that might be a significant problem.
Yeah. Now, we had some great comments when this question was asked in the Sovryn Tech Uncensored Facebook group. And I want to read some of those. And this is from, I'll leave it somewhat anonymous, even though anybody that's a patron's probably in the Sovryn Tech Uncensored group and you know who said it. But whatever, I'll leave it anonymous anyway. But this will be, I'll say, it's from producer number one, and she certainly is producer number one of in my book. Yay. So it's, let's see. She says, I have to say, it is a very dangerous position to be in, to have any of your money tied up with someone who has different values than you. Partnership does not give someone the right to your money. You are working very hard doing unpaid labor. Don't let anyone tell you raising kids isn't work. You are not wrong to feel uncomfortable. I totally agree with that sentiment.
That's a huge thing. Yeah, I'm glad she said that, because It's completely true. I mean, women take on a disproportionate share of labor in relationships and households in general, and it's labor that is necessary and important, but is undervalued by society.
Right.
You know, we can pay people to do that same labor, but often they're paid, minimum wages, right? And I'm talking about stuff, care work, caring for children, caring for older adults, like your parents. A lot of women are caught between, caring for their children, young children, and caring for their aging parents. And it is disproportionately women who take on those burdens. There's study after study that shows when there's multiple siblings of an aging parent, the female siblings always end up shouldering the majority of the care work for that aging parent.
Yeah.
And I'm talking stuff like time, like not just paying for care, paying for other people to do the care, but stuff like spending your own time, to care for the parent and your own labor. I'm talking about laundry, dishes, household chores, keeping the house clean, paying the bills, accounting work for a household. I mean, pretty soon you get to the point where you have to be almost like the level of a professional nanny, a professional chef, a professional house cleaner, a professional accountant, and sometimes a professional event planner, organizer. I mean, go down the list of jobs. Those are the skills that women are expected to have and expected to do for free and not even be thanked for it. And it's just part of being a woman. And that's the gendered expectations. Now, I won't say there's no expectations on men. Often there's the expectation that men are going to have the primary earning power in a household. And there can be enormous pressure on men to make enough money to provide, especially when there's kids involved, right?
Yeah.
And I'm not going to discount that either, but at least men aren't expected to do the second shift when they get home. They're pretty much get a pass on putting their feet up when they get home from work after earning a lot of money. And, if a woman works, she's expected to do all the chores, on her downtime. Plus, spend an hour getting ready for work every day so she looks pretty with makeup and hair and full drag, as Carrie calls it from the Workationing podcast. So, I mean, that unpaid labor is really something that, I don't know, maybe you want to spend some time reading about it. I actually read this feminist book once that really helped me acknowledge the burden of the second shift and just how much work, household work, and care work women are expected to do and do.
Do you remember the title of the book?
Yeah, it was a basic feminism textbook called Thinking About Women by Margaret, it's not Margaret Atwood. She's The Handmaid's Tale. I can't remember her last name, but search for Thinking About Women. It's a college textbook about feminism.
Nice.
And it has great chapters and statistics on just the amount of labor that women are expected to do. Never minding emotional labor. If you've ever heard the concept of emotional labor, that's just the idea that, strangers are supposed to be able to tell a woman who has a nice, kind-looking face their problems, and the woman's supposed to listen empathetically, hold space for them, maybe give them advice, or just say, oh, it'll be okay, care about their feelings, think about their feelings, and people expect this of women all the time. Also, scheduling stuff, women are often the ones who are expected to schedule get-togethers, to plan out logistics completely for free. I can't tell you how many times somebody has asked me to act as a secretary for a man in my life. Sometimes it's not even Brian. I mean, sometimes they contacted me and they're like, hey, can you give Brian a message for me? I'm like, why don't you, he has an email address, he has a Facebook, you can reach out to him yourself. And they say, oh, well, I tried that, but he didn't respond. Okay, so what makes you think you can bug me now, right?
Yeah, right.
And it's not only you. I've had men do this to me, and I think it's always been men who have asked me to be the unpaid secretary for another man in my life. I've had people ask me to pass on a message to Andreas Antonopoulos.
Yep.
Never fucked Andreas. Never dated him. He's my co-host on a podcast.
Right.
And people still contact me and say, hey, can you tell Andreas ...
Yeah.
Somebody has asked me to do it for Brett Venat. Again, a friend, a fellow podcaster, someone I had no relationship with except, a friendly or a professional one. And it's like, I don't know. I never know what to say in those circumstances, but I often feel like saying, what do I look like? Somebody's secretary?
Yeah.
Like, I have a PhD and this happens to me, okay? So, I mean, that's emotional labor. That's when people expect women to do this unpaid labor that in any other situation, someone would get paid for, and it's often not even asked of men.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that was a complete tirade and rant about feminism, but it's just something to be aware of, and I absolutely agree with the producer who commented about that, because, I mean, she's right. You have to recognize the value of what you're bringing to the table in terms of labor, and that, of course, plays into household economics, and who has the power of, who has the right to be able to dictate how the shared money is spent, so to speak.
Yeah, well, so I remember growing up, I mean, like, this really, really sticks with me. I mean, granted, I have a pretty good memory, especially when it comes to things like entertainment and TV and all that. But there was the show Family Matters with Steve Urkel. Everybody remembers Steve Urkel from the 90s.
Did I do that?
Yeah, fantastic little show. Anyway, the mother on that, black woman, her job for years on that show...
Black women have it worse.
Well, right. Her job on that show, she was like an elevator operator, at this place of business.
Mm-hmm.
And they were getting an automated elevator. And so, like she was going to be out of a job. And so there was a managerial position opening at this place of business where she was the elevator operator. And so she was going to sign up for it because she needed a job, wanted a job.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, Carl, the dad, was just a policeman. It's not like they're rolling in dough. Yeah. Right. So, anyway, I mean, he looked like he was rolling in donuts maybe, but regardless. So the mother, she signs up for this managerial thing, and she doesn't get the job, and the guy explains to her, is like, look, you've been a great worker, you've been a part of this company for so long, we love you, but just you don't have the qualifications for a management position. Oh. And she starts to walk out feeling very distraught. Obviously, that's what's getting parlayed.
Yeah.
And then she turns around and says, no, you know what? And she talks about all the things it takes to be a mother. And all the unpaid labor and everything that she does all the time. She gives this huge spiel saying, like, I've managed this many people, I've done this every day. It's like, you tell me, I don't know, I don't have the qualifications for this kind of job. Oh, yeah. And I remember watching that as a kid. I mean, then that still sticks with me, that whole speech, because I'm just like, oh my God. And it was such a lesson for me that, not everything, not all labor, not everything gets judged by monetary value or a paycheck. It's kind of like right. It's kind of like the old saying that, like everybody says, well, capitalism makes an iPhone. No, labor makes an iPhone. Isms just decide who gets paid, and I think that there's a lot of truth to that. But the point being is that there's a lot of this stuff. I mean, there's things that it doesn't come with a paycheck. That doesn't mean you don't earn something out of it, and you don't deserve certain things out of it.
Yeah, that's right.
So I think that that's a very, very salient point, particularly from producer number one here. And actually, there's another comment here from producer number one that I want to get into, or that I want to mention. Your money is your money. That you are in a position where you can't have a paying job makes you in a vulnerable position in the event something unexpected happens. If he wants to spend more money on things he likes, he can earn it. You aren't in the same position to do so. Just trying to look out for you, someone who has commingled finances with a former spouse, and you're right. You're right. She agreed that experiences are greater than stuff. So, which I would largely agree with that sentiment as well. So then let's go to...
Wait a minute.
Go ahead.
Can we talk about the experiences versus stuff dichotomy for a minute?
Sure.
Okay. So I largely agree with that statement, but I think there's some nuance to it that could be explored. Because not everything is strictly an experience versus a thing, right? Like, for example, if you spend money on let's say some food that you're going to cook together, mm-hmm. Is that an experience or a thing? I think it's a little bit of both.
Yeah.
Because you're getting an experience of cooking and eating dinner together, but it's also a thing that you consume.
Yeah, I don't think it's a hyper-literal statement, but I get the sentiment. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, sure. Everybody's going to have slightly different priorities when it comes to what they want to spend their money on.
Right.
And, ooh.
I mean, do you want, it's pretty basic. Like, do you spend an extra $20,000 on a car, or do you take that $20,000 to go out, on an amazing vacation where you use that money instead that won't go down monthly on a down payment, to go on like some kind of cool vacation or have a good time on the
Yeah,
weekend.
and if you take it to an extreme, then you're living in a tiny house, driving around the United States, just having experiences, man, and never having any stuff. And I think that's bullshit. Like, I don't want that lifestyle.
Okay, you
and
don't, but there's people that do.
I understand there's people that do, but sometimes the people that do present it in this holier-than-thou way as though they're superior because they're spending money on experiences rather than stuff. And you know what? I think it's okay to want some stuff sometimes. I want some stuff, but I also want to have some experiences too. And it's okay if you're not falling on the very extreme end of the spectrum to where you're a complete minimalist, you know?
Sure. Yeah, I don't think anybody here on this list was like, you know, espousing like a sense of superiority or something over like what they want to do, you know.
Maybe not, but I've heard it plenty of times as almost a spiritual advice, you know, where you should sell all of your possessions, get a tiny house, and just focus on the experiences. And I mean, that's well and good for some people, but it's not for everybody. Some people do like to have stuff.
Sure.
And I don't have any judgment about that.
Sure. Okay, so let's move on to producer 2. And this is, let's see, as an ex-banker, always have...
you mean you've got some bankers in your group, Brian?
This is a woman, actually.
Oh.
Ex-banker. Always have separate accounts. Whether you tell the other person or not is your business. But it's super fucked up how the banking world looks at joint accounts. Something goes south between you, it's a race to the bank for who can get the money first. Plus, what you earn is yours, not your significant others to say what you do with it. So have your own account to spend how the fuck you want. Hey, I have no beef with any of that statements.
You found that out the hard way, didn't you?
Yeah, somebody might have here. I mean, that's really, yeah, right on. So then we've got, let's see, one more here. Actually, I can't read that one because it needs to see more. A few of these do. Here's another one from producer 2. And having separate accounts doesn't mean you can't have one together. Just have funds in there that you agree on the purpose and whatnot. Just don't put all your eggs in one basket. Yeah, that's not a bad idea either. Here's another one from producer number 1.
Hold on a second. I'm going to play devil's advocate here for a second.
Okay.
Do you think that if you've trusted somebody enough to commingle your DNA with them, never mind your money for a minute, but your DNA, and created a child together, do you think that then it's okay to commingle some funds?
Do I think that?
Well, you or anybody else listening. Because I do. I think that commingling your DNA is the ultimate expression of trust, even more so than commingling money. You can separate money even if it's a pain in the ass.
Yeah, but
and you can separate assets, but you cannot split a child. I mean, you can, but the child not, they'll probably not be super happy about that. Obviously, they prefer to have their parents together and getting along well, right?
Right.
So, I mean, I would say, like, that's one of the reasons people get married in the first place. When they have kids, they want there to be a sense of permanence and stability for the child to be able to know that their parents are going to be together forever, or at least, for as long as it's possible, and hopefully getting along well to the point where they're not going to be fighting over things like money. And I mean, I don't think it's a bad idea if you have a child, which you both contributed to, to have some kind of joint finances situation. Now, if you don't have any kids, it really just seems like a practical matter. It's easier to keep stuff separate. I had a relationship that went on for 5 years, and we lived together. And we this is not Brian, by the way. This is somebody else.
Yeah, no past tense here.
Yeah, and we for the most part kept everything separate, but we would both contribute to the finances of the household. But when we broke up, we even had a few things to separate. Yep. We did it completely amicably, and we just, it was like we had to split up the bed. Like, okay, somebody's going to buy the bed from the other one. This person's going to move out. This person's going to take the table. It was like we had to negotiate stuff like that, and we did. It would have been a hell of a lot harder if we had merged more stuff or if we had gotten married. So it kept it simple to keep things separated. But over time, I think this is why they say common law marriage came into effect. Over time, you do it's unavoidable. You buy stuff together, you start owning stuff together, and so some stuff is going to get commingled. But I think it's a kind of a good check-in. Like, if you don't trust your partner enough to commingle some things with them, like, maybe that's something you have to examine further.
Sure. Yeah, well, on that note, let's go back to producer number 1, where she said, "My ex used the joint bank account as a way to control me. He hated that I traveled a lot to build up a career outside of the shitty town we grew up in, and he wanted to stay in. Of course, not implying this could happen to you, but getting a joint account is an unnecessary step to take, and one that could be difficult to undo." I think that's fair warning. Like, I don't think there's anything crazy being said there at all.
Sure.
Like, consider that a joint account could be used in the future, or now or whenever, to potentially control you.
Oh, absolutely.
I think that's a totally valid thing to say.
Absolutely, but, try to pick a partner who's not going to turn controlling. I don't know.
Yeah. All right, I'm going to read one more here, and then we can move on to other questions. So, this is from producer number 3. This is a guy. From my perspective, household finances in a non-contractually enforced relationship is a great example for appropriate technology. I do all budgeting with my girlfriend on paper. All our agreed bills are taken out of the bank and put into a nifty floor safe, and we can't see or mess with each other's account. I'd very much like for her to save money. To her defense, she saves $3 or $4 each month, whatever. But I'm not about to force it on her. I feel that joint accounts should only be a thing when you have mutual trust in your goals and each have the understanding that what motivates men and women are usually different. Men tend to focus on the how, and women tend to focus on the why. Plus, if there is ever a breakup and someone wants to get nasty, mutually assured destruction applies because we both have to be there to open the safe. So, I don't know. I mean, the men-women thing.
That's an interesting little Shamir's secret sharing scheme for relationships.
Yeah. I mean, that's a trick.
Yeah.
Sure. What the hell?
I mean, if they both like that solution, that's great. I mean, I think that's creative and awesome, and more than most people probably talk about their finances.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's really thought out. Like, that's actually creating, like, physical two-factor authentication.
Yeah, exactly.
For everything. And
there's something to be said for the envelope style of budgeting. Have you ever heard of this, Brian?
What is it, the envelope?
It's called envelope budgeting,
Yes.
where you literally take the cash
Yep.
that you have paid in a month, and you put it in an envelope, and it's like, okay, there's $400 for the rent, or, well, obviously it's hard to get a place for $400.
No, but right.
But you put an amount for each thing. You have an envelope for the cable bill,
Yep.
and the electric bill, and the whatever else you have for bills.
Yeah.
And you put physical cash in those envelopes.
And you fill up those envelopes.
Yeah, and
you don't do anything else till they're full.
Exactly, and then
Right.
you use it to pay the bill. And I think that works really well for some people because it just makes it so concrete. And there's a lot of studies that show that people think of money differently when it's cash in their hand versus when it's numbers on a screen in a bank account. So
Yeah.
that works really well for some people.
That's a great point to bring up. There's a lot of little plans like that. Like, I know Neil Bortz, not that I agree with this guy anymore, really, but Neil Bortz has, like, the dollar saving plan. Like, he has a bunch of these. There's so many of these really
Oh, is that like every time you break a 20 or something?
Yeah, you
change?
set aside the
Yeah,
dollars.
That's right.
Yeah, something like that. There's so many of these neat little tricks that maybe you could do with cryptocurrencies, but that have kind of mental tricks that have allowed you to really engage in more sound financial strategies, shall we say, that the lack of cash has kind of eliminated. And there, I think the research is in on that. When it's just numbers on the screen, you think about it wholly differently.
Mm-hmm.
And so maybe an interesting trick to do is to start having this money appear as cash. And instead of necessarily doing joint accounts, you could do these joint envelopes or these joint safes or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
I think those are very solid ideas to explore, because then you can see the money go away, and then maybe one person could understand what it takes to get the experience, or what one person can understand what it takes to get the thing, and just overall there's a better understanding of what's going on. And I think that's a pretty powerful suggestion right there. So,
Well, I don't quite understand what that person meant by women focus on the why.
Yeah, that was the part where I was just like,
okay,
yeah,
whatever.
yeah, I mean, that's, yeah, I don't.
What does that even mean?
Right.
I don't like.
I don't cut down the middle on like what women think and what men think.
Yeah,
I mean, that's
no,
just,
me neither.
and if there is, it's usually a cultural kind of, some kind of reinforced bullshit. But regardless, I thought that overall that was a very interesting suggestion,
Yeah, that's right.
an idea, and mindset. So, okay, So I think that pretty well wraps that up. There's some other comments from the peanut gallery, as it were, from some of the producers of the show that I thought was nice. And I said all I had to say. I mean, yeah, the philosophy thing, that's what you got to work on, in my opinion. I mean, that's my bottom line, right there.
Right.
And do you have anything else you want to add to that, Stephanie, or we can move on to the next questions?
No, I think that's good.
Cool. Okay, so let's see, which one, I have to try and remember which ones exactly we had done. All right, we did the sex in the car.
Yeah, we did sex in the car.
Okay.
Speaking of that, I have to get some gas, so...
Oh, we got to get some gas.
The next exit.
All right. So before we get to the next question, we'll just pause it here.
Okay.
All right. So next question, and this kind of has multiple parts to it. Will society ever evolve beyond some of the, and this is in parentheses, horrible, end parentheses, societal norms that seem to exist? And I'm guessing he means in reference to relationships. So, because there's two examples given, and I think both of these are worth talking about. One is, don't respond to calls or texts immediately. And two, don't let the person know that you're interested, because that gives them power and you need to stay in control. So I think both of these are related. They're both saying pretty much, like, you have to do these tricks, these mental tricks, to, seem like
you don't care.
Like you don't care, and that's how you end up, that's like some kind of power dynamic or something that will lure somebody into thinking you're interested or not interested, which makes you feel maybe safer or something like that. I mean, I kind of feel like when I hear these, these are like, okay, what do I do to keep from seeming like a creeper?
That's exactly what I was going to say.
Yeah.
So, will society ever evolve beyond these things? No. And here's why.
Okay.
Because they're not social norms. They are... You know that story about the woman who cuts off this is sexist, but the woman who cuts off the last 2 inches of her pot roast and puts it in the pan, and and her daughter says, well, why do you do that? And she says, well, my mother did it. And then so she asks her mother, well, why did you do that? And she said, well, because my pan was too small and it didn't fit. Right? So we do these things without understanding the original purpose behind doing them. We lose the point of it. Right? And we think, oh, I have to do this, but we don't stop to think why.
Right.
So you hit it on the head, Brian. These are not just simply social norms. There's a very specific purpose behind not texting somebody right away and not seeming like you're too interested. It's because people get turned off at the beginning of a relationship. They get turned off when they sense desperation. If you go out with somebody and they sense that you're desperate to be in a relationship, to be married, to have children, to whatever, just to have someone to get sex, to get laid, if they sense any kind of desperation, especially women, they're usually out the door. But men too. I mean, men get turned off by desperate women as well.
Sure.
So the point of not texting incessantly and not, showing too much interest, I guess, if you will, is basically to not seem desperate and to not turn the person off.
Yeah.
And now, if you are a person who genuinely is not desperate and doesn't feel a sense of lack in your dating life, thinks, you know what, there are plenty of fish in the sea, there's abundant partners out there for me, if this person's not right for me, fine, no worries, it just wasn't meant to be, I'll go on to the next person. If you're a person who has that attitude, you're probably not going to need to worry about when you text, because you won't seem desperate, you won't reek of desperation. If you're naturally busy, if you naturally have a lot of hobbies, if you have your own friends, if you have a life, if you have a real well-rounded life, then you won't need to worry about following these silly rules, because you won't seem desperate, because you're busy enough that you're not going to be just sitting around literally waiting for the other person to text you or talk to you in some way when you're not together, right? You won't need to worry about those things because you're not desperate. These rules are for people who might, inadvertently, without realizing it, come off as a little bit desperate and be turning off potential mates because of their desperation.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of these, what are being described as societal norms, like, yeah, they're social norms. Like, I'm in the sense that they've evolved socially. It's not like it's a natural part of the human condition necessarily, okay? But I feel like there's something that evolved for to some degree for good reasons. You know, like just like you described, if you're naturally just a very busy person, or you know you're always doing something or whatever, you know, then you can't respond right away, right? Or maybe
exactly.
Right. So there's a lot of reasons why these things actually exist. Now, if you're doing them, I'll agree they're horrible if you're doing them as like a dating tactic.
As a formula, yeah.
Yeah, like
right.
Then you're absolutely right. It's fucking horrible. Okay, but at the same time, like, I mean, there's a reason these things came into existence, and I don't know that they're necessarily nefarious or malicious or anything like that, or that they're inherently horrible.
No.
In fact...
But, I mean, I hear the person, they're asking the question, they're saying...
Right.
This feels like a game. And you're right, it is a game.
Yeah.
But you don't need to worry about playing the game and knowing all the unwritten rules and all that if you're just naturally not desperate.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So... I mean, honestly, I feel like things have changed. I think that socially, the norms are evolving, and this is something that annoys the fuck out of me. Talk about a horrible norm. That you have to respond right away.
Oh, like that's right, I know.
I mean, whether it's a romantic relationship,
or
a
client,
business, or whatever kind of relationship it is, I think it's absolutely fucking horrendous that now the social norm is you need to respond right away. And if you don't respond within 24 hours, you don't care. That is horseshit. That is total crap. I have people that I consider, you know, best friends in the world, where, you know, they may not get in touch with me for 2-3 weeks a month. Mm-hmm. You know, after I ask them a question or something, it's fine. Like, otherwise they wouldn't really be that great of a friend.
Goodness knows I don't always get back to people right away.
Right. I mean, really, like, yes, it goes to those extremes where it could take that long, you know, and that's okay. People have lives. People do things. And if they're that, you know, I mean, this is a powerful thing. Again, not just like dating. And I know this is a dating question and it's a little bit different. But like with friends, you know, if they're the right kind of friend, if like they're that kind of friend where it's just like it's an instant kinship, it's that really deep kinship and all that, you could be separated for years, and then it's like time never even passed the next time you finally talk to each other. You know, it's just, yeah. So
now
anyway.
I get that there's something to that, like the idea that if every time you reach out to someone, you're always the first one to reach out to them. They never text you first. They never initiate contact with you. They never ask you if you want to go out. You're always asking them out.
Yeah.
They always take like 2 days to respond to a text message. You know, maybe they're just not that into you.
Yeah, take the hint too.
Right. There is something to that, but you know, I don't know. I would totally recommend this book. I listened to this audiobook recently of He's Just Not That Into You. I know it made into a movie as well. I haven't watched the movie yet, but I intend to. And I thought it was the reason I seeked out this audiobook was because I was doing some research for a podcast that I'm planning to do with producer MK on like ripping apart, you know, these traditional dating books.
Yeah.
And I was going to listen to the rules, which I still haven't listened to, which I'm expecting to be garbage, by the way.
Yeah.
And I was going to listen to this. He's just not that into you. And I was expecting to be able to rip it apart. Actually, I was expecting it to be just gendered bullshit all over the place, and just not the way I would approach dating at all. But actually, it was great. It was fantastic. It applies to not just women seeking men, any gender, and even situations outside of dating, right? Like, sometimes people are screaming with their actions that they're just not that into you, or they're just not that excited about the thing that you want to do. And you have to, like, pay attention to what their actions are saying. And they'll avoid saying it directly with their words because they don't want to hurt your feelings, but their actions are screaming the truth. And so you have to pay attention to that. And I just thought it was a great book. So I would recommend, you know, listening to that book, even if you're a guy, right, and you're not looking for another guy. But it basically drops a lot of truths that just make it so clear and simple.
Yeah, it gives you a lot of insights.
Figuring out whether someone's into you or not.
Right. And I'll, if I think of it, I'll put the link for that in the show notes for people to check out. So, Yeah, and I will just say also quick with that book, like I heard a little bit of it myself, and the only caveat I put on it is that it's definitely for conventional relationships. Like it's not a book for polyamory or open relationships or anything like that.
No, but I think people who are just trying to navigate, like if they're single and they're just trying to navigate one relationship, it's perfect.
Yeah, a lot of what
simple.
Yes, a lot of it, what it had to say was solid. I agree with that. So, yeah, I guess I don't know how much more to add to this. But I just, I did just want to say that now I think it's actually quite the opposite. Now you really need to respond right away, or, you're considered a schmuck or a loser or something like that, or that you don't care. And I think that that's positively ridiculous. Some of us, some human beings, still, we don't have our phones with us 24/7. We are actually doing shit with our lives, and we're not on, we're not at the beck and call at all times, you know what I mean? And it doesn't mean that we don't care. It's quite the opposite. So,
right.
But anyway, yeah, I mean, will they evolve beyond this stuff? I mean, look, I agree with what you initially said, Stephanie. I mean, because I think that this is all really responses to, is somebody, like, how do you seem like you're not desperate? How do you seem like you're not a creeper? Or whatever,
right.
Something
just
like this.
Just make it simple. Don't worry about following all these complicated rules that are unwritten and like texting at exactly the right time. Just don't be just desperate. Just authentically, genuinely, don't be desperate.
Yeah.
Arrange your life so that you are not desperate for a relationship. I know it's easier said than done sometimes, but people can smell desperation. They know it. Even if you take 2 days to text them, they know you're desperate. Just don't be desperate, and you can make it so simple.
Yeah. I mean, you're not going to evolve beyond these norms necessarily. I mean, pretty much humanity would have to evolve to where, there aren't...
To where we're not turned off by desperation.
Yeah.
And everybody is turned off by... Who isn't turned off by desperation?
Right. Or we'd have to, like, evolve to where creepers are no longer a thing. And I just don't really see either of that, like, necessarily happening. So, anyway, that's... there's a lot of other societal norms that have to do with relationships that I think we can certainly evolve beyond. I think that we can evolve to some degree beyond jealousy. And I'm not saying jealousy is like inherently bad or whatever, but I think that there's certain things that we can evolve beyond. But some of this stuff, kind of naturally came into existence. I mean, honestly, through the introductions of technology and a lot of other things, and they're not necessarily inherently bad. But if you're using it, like I said before, if you're using these things as like tactics on like to trick somebody or whatever, well, I mean, then yeah, that's just insane. And
don't expect it to work.
Yeah, and
it's just so complicated to try to follow these rules of, if only I text at exactly the right time and say exactly the right thing, then they'll be mine. No, it doesn't work that way. And if you have to follow all these complicated rules to get somebody, then maybe they're just not that into you, right?
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, genuine human love has no formula. Like, genuine human love. Long-term love that lasts, for however long love lasts, has no formula. I mean, getting a hookup and picking up women at bars or guys or whatever, all that stuff, yeah, maybe there's some formulas that seem to work, but all of that shit's superficial, okay? I mean, like, in my opinion, it really is, and it's kind of, it can be seen, I mean, I get it has its place, but in the grand scheme, it's kind of pathetic at times. So just get rid of this formulaic thinking. That goes true across the board, not just with relationships, but with all kinds of stuff. I would argue against even formulas in economics, quite frankly, but that's a whole other ballgame. So anyway, want to get on to another question?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. So we got a couple of fun ones we're going to end this off with.
Cool.
Let's see. All right, we'll do this one first. How many times a day do you prefer to have sex? How many times a week? What do you think is the optimum? Like, I mean, what do you think is healthy? A healthy amount. I mean, I would start off just saying I don't think that there's like some kind of set healthy amount.
Yeah.
Because value is subjective, and like people have differing sex drives.
It's a huge wide range that's going to vary from person to person, and that's going to vary over the course of your lifetime.
Exactly.
So I'm not comfortable saying there is any normal.
No, right? Yeah, there is no optimum. There is no normal. There's no, and I've read the books. I mean, like where like the relationship books, or the marriage counseling books, or something like that, where they say something. Oh, you should be having it at least once a week, or you should be having it like once and twice a day. Oh, wouldn't it be great to get back to where you're doing it twice a day? Mm-hmm. Blah blah blah, and all this stuff. And it's like, yeah, but people change. You know, like those numbers are meaningless.
Right, and there's so much pressure that people already put on themselves of, like, am I normal, right?
Right.
And the answer is, don't compare yourself to other people. It's about what you're comfortable with. It's not about what everybody else does. So
Yeah.
I think it's almost pointless to indulge in even statistics about that kind of stuff. Because
Yeah.
it's like, don't worry about if you're normal. Worry about if you're happy, right, for you.
Right. I mean, so, I mean, I'll ask you, and if you don't want to answer, I'll cut it, but, like, I mean, is there an optimal amount? We don't have to talk about our own life necessarily, but is there an optimal amount that you, like, that's optimal for you? Like, that's your own taste?
I feel like there's absolutely no reason for me to answer this question.
Sure.
Because the person literally, it's none of their business except if they want to perv out on me.
Right
so,
on.
And I'm probably not going to ever be in a relationship with whoever asked this question, so there's just no reason for me to answer it.
There you go. Okay.
And I'm not going to give people a number to then compare themselves to and say, am I normal?
Right.
Is Stephanie normal, right?
Right. Fair enough. So, yeah, I kind of figured you'd actually answer that way.
Yep.
That's why I
None of
prefaced
your
it.
business.
Yeah. So, fair enough. Okay, yeah, I think that answers that. I mean, people just have to, yeah, you know, that's more of that formulaic thinking. You know what I mean? Like we were just talking about with the last question. That's more of that, you know, well, there's this amount, you do this, then, you know, you wait this amount of time and so many minutes, and how long do you go, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, just stop. You know, love is this, it's not a binary, it's not something that you can fit into an equation.
Just like with money, like, oh, do I have enough money? Am I wealthier than my friends and my neighbors? Like, how am I doing compared to everybody else I know? Well, just stop comparing yourself to everybody else you know, and you'll probably be a lot happier.
Yeah, exactly.
Then
yeah,
you can focus on how much money you want to have and what makes you happy from within, never mind everybody else's opinion.
Damn right. So, love it. Okay. All right, let's go on to another question then.
By the way, you can have sex as often as you please. It's called masturbation.
Yeah. Fuck. I mean, absolutely. So.
You don't even need to rely on another person. How about that?
Right on. So, all right. Let's see. You want to go on to another question?
Yeah.
Okay. So, what are your thoughts on outdoor sex? And there's like a second part to this, actually. And if it's on someone else's property or public property, does it potentially break the nap?
See, I thought this question was going to be a dumb question.
Yeah.
But then I heard the second half, and it was completely redeemed.
Well,
does
yeah.
it break the nap?
Yeah. All right. Well,
We've got a comedian in the audience.
Yeah. Let's go with the first part. Okay, which is just thoughts in general on outdoor sex. You want to start it off, or do you want me to? I mean, do you like it? Do you not like it?
So, I revealed a lot about my preferences about sex in a car earlier in this episode, so
Yes.
I guess I might as well go there a little bit with the outdoor sex.
Okay.
I think it can be really fun and romantic to go camping together and have sex in a tent, but that's about as much outdoorsy as I like to get. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love nature, I love the great outdoors, but literally, like, being backed up against a tree or laying down on a sandy beach with, like, sand, fleas, and crabs pinching your ass and sand getting in your most intimate parts is not fun. It's a romanticized vision that people have, but it's really not fun in real life. There's a reason most people have sex in beds, because it's comfortable.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
So a tent, that's about as far as I'm willing to go. I literally have seen, I've seen all these articles about, like, spicing up your sex life, and I've heard Dan Savage talk about this, where he read this article in Cosmo where it said to, like, take your man hiking in the woods and, like, pocket a smooth rock and then give him a blowjob up against a tree and press the smooth rock into his taint, and it'll really knock his socks off. Right.
What the fuck?
That is ridiculous, right? Like, nobody wants that. I don't know where they even come up with this shit, and I hope no one actually did that, because that would be really weird.
Yeah. Rocks are cold, even if you pocket them.
Right?
Shit.
Yeah, exactly. And where are you going to find a smooth, flat rock in the middle of a mountain, right? It's not exactly like a beach stone, so...
Yeah.
It just seems really... They wrote that just to fuck with people, I'm sure, but...
Yeah, I mean, they have a monthly magazine they have to publish.
That's right.
Yeah, so...
So, I think, like, a lot of outdoor sex can get to that level of ridiculousness. I mean, if you like it, sure, go for it. But, and tents, like I said, that's romantic. You can have a few creature comforts, or at least not get dirt in your genitals, you know?
Yeah.
But, yeah, I don't think it always really works so well when you're, like, literally covered in dirt.
Yeah, so, that's, yeah, you're hitting at it. And I think, actually, like, our question on car sex kind of touched on why I think outdoor sex is somewhat of a thing. I mean, you could say it's the original thing, okay, and sure, that I understand that argument, but today, I think it's still somewhat of a thing because, again, it might be where you have to have sex. Like, you don't have a choice. You know, you can't do it at home, or you're,
that's
having
exactly
an affair.
The situation. I had this partner once who was very into Henry David Thoreau.
Oh, sure.
And he also had a living situation where he had some roommates.
Yeah.
And one day we went into the woods, and
right.
But there were like leaves and sticks everywhere, and you know, we heard a dog barking at one point, and then it got dark, and it was a little scary, and it was like, okay, well, that was nicer in theory than in practice. So.
Yeah, you know, I mean, like the bulk of the times that I've had outdoor sex has been at night, because otherwise it. Yeah,
but
I mean,
then,
you're
like,
just
mosquitoes. And...
Well, I mean, it depends. Sometimes the mosquitoes aren't bad, but I mean, the point being is that you're probably not necessarily, you're not so much. I mean, people could be very much into getting caught. You know, like the potential of getting caught, like that could kind of turn them on into doing something dangerous. Yep. And that's another thing too, is I think there's a lot of subjective value in like what people fantasize about and what turns them on, and like the concept of being out in public. I mean, I'll admit it, like the idea of having sex like pretty openly in public, like is certainly a turn on to me. That's not the same thing as outdoor sex necessarily. I know what they mean by outdoor sex. So yeah, I mean that's up to the person, whether or not they're comfortable with that or whatever.
So does it break the nap? This is a great time.
Well, let me touch a little bit more on the outdoor sex thing.
All right, you touch on it.
Yeah, I'll touch it. Yeah. So. I mean, I like it fine, but I agree. Also, the other time that I've mainly done it would be while camping.
Yeah.
And that seems to be the time to make it happen.
Yeah, that's romantic.
Yeah, and there can be a lot of fun involved with that. I mean, certainly some of my, top fantasies have to do with, like being out in the woods and having sex or something like that. But, there's a lot more going on there than just that. I mean, so... Anyway,
because you're away from the internet. Does that have anything to do with it?
Yeah. I mean, that could be a part of it too. I mean,
nothing's unsexier than the internet. Let me tell you.
Yeah, I am to that point. I'll tell you. But
me too.
Yeah.
Let's go camping, Brian.
Yeah. All right.
A camping trip.
So, anyway, yeah, outdoor sex. I mean, I dig it, but I agree. Like, in fact, I've done the business on the beach, and it's terrible.
Yeah.
Like, it's absolutely fucking terrible.
Yeah.
And you just end up more laughing at each other, and not so much in the sexy way.
Try to have sex on the beach without getting sand in a place where you don't want it.
Yeah.
Just try. That's
Yeah.
my challenge to you, if you accept it. That's my challenge to you.
Or even not even, like having a good foothold. I mean, there's all kinds of
Yeah,
problems
that's right.
that are generated by that. Not that much of a fan of that sort of thing. I mean, I'm not saying I couldn't be convinced. I'm just saying that, I've been there, and there are real there's challenges, okay, when it comes to that. So, I mean, and here's the thing for me. Like, you could say, yeah, what if, do it up against some rock out in the woods, or she's on her knees and you're leaning against a tree or something. Like, I don't know, if I get the slightest hint that my partner is in any way uncomfortable, it's the worst turn off in the world. Like if I feel she's, I don't know, scraping her knee on the rock, or if her knee is hurt against
always something like that.
Yeah, kneeling on the branches or something like that, that turns me off to no end. So yeah, if you're camping, that's way more amenable to doing that sort of thing and having a good time. So anyway, okay, so let's go on to the second part. If it's on someone else's property or public property, does it potentially break the nap? What do you say?
Bravo to whoever wrote that trolling question.
I love it.
Okay, so here's my serious answer to what I don't think was a serious question. Maybe it was, I don't know, but
sure.
It's borderline. So, I think exhibitionism, indecent exposure, like kind of forcing someone or intending for someone to look at your naked body, especially your penis, is a violation of the NAP.
Interesting.
Right, because it's coercing someone to do something they don't want to do, which is look at your naked body and genitals.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's pretty safe to assume that most people don't want to see other people's genitals that they don't know. Just any random stranger's genitals. That's why we all wear clothes, And now I know, Brian, you have some problems with that, but in general, do you want to see the dick of any random stranger that walks by you?
No, I don't.
Okay.
But at the same, well, if you want to keep going, keep going.
So I think it's pretty well established as a social norm that people wear clothes and don't show themselves having sex to other people that have not consented to it. Because by showing it to them, by showing another person a sexual act, you're involving them in the sexual act. You're getting turned on by them seeing you, right? That's the whole point of exhibitionism. You're drawing them into your sex act.
Mm-hmm.
And so, if the person who's watching it with their eyeballs doesn't consent to that, that is absolutely a NAP violation. You've sucked them into something they didn't want to be a part of. And you're using them for your own sexual gratification without their consent. So, yes, that is absolutely a NAP violation.
All right. Yeah.
Now, if you're just going on someone's land to discreetly fuck, I think under a strict, if we're going to be consistent and principled here, yeah, I think that's just the same as trespassing. If they don't see you having sex, it's the same as trespassing. Now, of course, proportionality. We don't shoot someone for trespassing necessarily unless we happen to go on Hans Hermann Hoppe's desert land, or Murray Rothbard's ranch in Las Vegas or whatever. We don't shoot someone for trespassing if they're not threatening us or anything like that, because of proportionality under the NAP. But yes, it is a minor NAP violation.
Okay, so,
but not on the same level as involving them in the sexual act by showing them yourself fucking. That's more akin to a sexual assault.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
You're assaulting their eyeballs.
Yeah. So obviously, like, I have my issues with the NAP. Not a fan. But I get what you're saying, and under the auspices of the question, is the violation of the NAP? They're asking about under the auspices of the NAP being a thing, and in that case, yeah, I don't see much to disagree with you. In your response.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's problematic because this is something that's socially evolved, not biologically evolved, but socially evolved, is the idea that, not wearing clothing is somehow can somehow be a negative act, right? Like, humans weren't born with clothing, and humans used to walk around wearing nothing at some points on the regular. And I'm sure that there were people that had, boners or whatever else is going on for them, and that you would see it, and it'd be like, okay, that's what's going on, and there's nothing that you would, there's nothing to do about that because it's just being human.
Do you think there's a difference though? Okay, so Louis C.K. would, admitted that he would jerk off in front of women, and he would sometimes even ask them and say, hey, do you mind if I whip out my dick right now and start masturbating? And they would be so shocked and stunned that they wouldn't know what to say.
Right.
And they wouldn't say no explicitly, and then he would just take out his dick and start jerking it. And he thought that was fine because at least he didn't rape anybody, and he asked before he did it. So obviously most people, I think, can see that he did something wrong. He did something coercive.
Mm-hmm.
That's unlibertarian, right? He did something coercive to those women. He had power over them. He bent the rules of consent, I would say.
Yep.
Definitely. And he committed a sexual grievance against them. Sexual assault.
Yeah,
and harassment.
Sure, I don't disagree with that, and I get it.
So let me finish the question, though.
Okay.
So that's what he did in the modern time. Now, yes, those women were socialized not to see a dick everywhere, but you don't think the same thing might have happened in paleo times when everybody was living in the same lean-to or yurt, and, maybe there's a powerful tribe member, and he has a powerful member that he sticks in a woman's face, a young woman's face, and he's like, well, we don't wear clothes in this tribe, so, you're just going to have to, look at me jerking off my dick, and there's nothing you can do about it. You don't think that's coercive, even as in a society where sexuality was less taboo and clothing was less a thing?
I think so. Yeah, so you're raising great points. I think that what Louis C.K. did, that wouldn't have been okay even in paleo times. Just in a very real sense, because he didn't really get consent, or at least not enthusiastic consent, which is what you want.
No.
Okay. If you sit down next to a gal as a caveman and you just start jerking off, no, I don't think that's okay.
Okay.
I think that
So
definitely affects somebody's person or invades somebody's personhood.
Yeah, I agree with you, but
Right.
What's the difference between, the way you were talking about it before, it almost sounded like, well, you just see some dicks when you're in a society like that, no big deal, you can't really complain about it because that's society.
Well, okay, so, and I'll bring this back to sex. I think, and look, I don't even want it to just be about dicks, because if we were in a Paleolithic society, I don't even think there'd be that many dudes. But
well, maybe not, but it's the reason. There's a good reason it's about dicks, because they are the most unambiguous, easy to see.
Right.
Sign of arousal that human beings display is an erect penis, right?
Yes.
You can see to an extent when a woman's aroused, but it's much more hidden, right?
Right.
And also, a penis is often an instrument of rape. And so people have that association in their mind. You don't have to be a radical feminist to know that rapes happen with penises. Trigger warning, by the way. Sorry, you might want to put a content warning on that or something. But, that's a thing, and that's why it's often about a penis.
Okay, I get that. I understand that.
Okay.
But also if a guy ends up, and look, I'm not here to defend men in any way. Okay, I'm just saying if a guy just happens to get a boner wearing khakis, you can see it. Really, what is he supposed to excuse himself to the bathroom? Most guys will try and hide it. They don't want to be embarrassed by it either.
Most guys will try to hide it.
Right, but it's not like he did some kind of grand evil if somebody notices it. You know what I mean? We'll bring it back to sex. I'm just saying, being nude, there's really... I understand the conventional world that we live in, what people have been conditioned to see as unacceptable and anathema and all that. But, nudity should not be a problem. Now, having sex in front of somebody that didn't want to see that might be a very different story. Okay, and that's all that I'm saying. I wasn't presenting anything like Louis C.K. or whatever. I'm saying that the sight of genitalia should not be the anathema thing that it is. Okay, now if a person's doing it in the way that Louis C.K. was, or whatever else, something where they are. He was purposely saying, "Hey, I want to jerk off in front of you." Mm-hmm. So there is sex is going on there, right? Mm-hmm. So absolutely that can be a kind of sexual assault. A guy, if we lived in a world where people didn't wear clothes, and a guy just randomly gets a boner, I don't think that that's sexual assault. Mm-hmm. Okay, that's what I'm saying. Now,
yeah, sure, but don't you think it's a fine line? Some people have humiliation fetishes, right? So what if a guy gets a boner in public and he's like, "Oh my God, I'm so ashamed, I'm so embarrassed," and then women start looking at it and screaming and freaking out, and he gets even more and more turned on. What is that?
Well, no, right, but again, there's kind of there's some givens that there's some things I'm expecting. The idea that it was a society where people didn't normally wear clothes. I don't think that that fetish would necessarily evolve, and B, there shouldn't be shrieks of horror at seeing a dick. I think I was going to say I think there should always be a shriek of horror at the sight. I'm joking. Okay, But now, I mean, but this is the thing, even within, say, that society where nudity was normal and a lot of this other stuff, yeah, I mean, having sex, like, right in front of somebody's house, yeah, I could see where that's not okay. And even if I was to accept the nap, that could be breaking the nap,
Yeah.
But the hard part is that, like, everything's, like, where would you have, like, where can you have sex, right? I guess you can get your own place, and then you're kind of stuck to doing it there. There's a part of me that's like, sex is a beautiful act. It's not some terrible thing, Like,
well, sometimes it's a beautiful act. Sometimes it's not.
Sometimes it's not, and that's, yeah, and that can be a real problem too. And that's why I think, the question, I think, was meant to be kind of tongue in cheek, but I think it raises a lot of very serious problems.
Yeah.
Like, so
okay,
what,
so where can you go to have sex if you don't have your own space?
All right, no. Well, hold on. So, like, I've been in houses where I know, like, what if your roommates are having sex?
Oh, yeah.
Did you sign up for that?
Right. It's a tragedy in the commons.
Probably
there.
not. But, like, at the same, I mean, when I've been in those situations, I mean, I smile, not because I'm turned on, but just because I'm so happy that people are fucking getting it on. Like, I mean, that's a different mindset, and not everybody has my mindset, and I understand that. But now here's a very old libertarian challenge, and that is, if you, like, say a couple are in their house, okay, in the city, they're having sex in their living room, windows open,
okay,
you're walking by, you can look into that window. You see them having sex. Who's in the wrong? You're offended. Who's in the wrong?
Right. Well, they are on their own property, but they are not taking steps to ensure their privacy. So I would say that in that situation, if you don't want to see it, you have a responsibility to look away. You can't just keep gawking and say, "Oh my God, I'm so offended," but keep looking.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I mean, if you keep looking, certainly that's on you.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I don't
but
think
what's the principle of the nap there? I don't know,
I mean, there's no obligation for those people to close their. I mean, like, that's literally saying the nap forces you to keep your blinders closed,
no.
and that's where that's one of those situations where, in my opinion, I'm not saying it's what you said. I'm just saying, in my opinion, that's where it just shows that the nap is just so overly simplistic and crazy, in that situation. But go ahead.
Well, I mean, do you live on a first floor apartment and there's pedestrians walking by all the time, right? Like, how much is someone going out of their way to see inside your windows, right? It's like, have you ever heard that Onion snippet where there's like a little thing from the Onion where it's like, neighbor is so offended by what she sees through her binoculars into her neighbor's window. Like, there's this old lady, she's peering out the window through binoculars into her neighbor's house and going, "Oh my God, I'm so offended. I just had to keep watching because I was so offended."
Yeah, I remember that.
It's like that. It's like, okay, if you're going out of your way to look at the people and they're not necessarily going out of their way to show you, it's your fault. But if you're just walking down the street and they're on a first floor with a bay window and they're having sex right in front of it and they know there's pedestrians walking by, then I would say it's a little bit more like they're exhibitionists and they're perverts and they're in the wrong. Because you didn't expect it, like you can't help but see it, basically, as you're walking down the street.
Sure. Well, I think that this highlights a very important point, which is you take everything case by case, and there are no hard and fast rules. All right, there might be some hard and fast fucking, but there is, but there's no hard and fast.
I just think that we can have some principles, but yeah, I mean, obviously the nap is not the end-all be-all. There might need to be additional principles that come into play, right? Like, the nap isn't saying much about privacy or about, like, sort of these pollution issues. Like, you can almost argue that it's almost like pollution, right? Like, you can have property, and supposedly your property goes into a cone down into the center of the earth and up into the sky, into space, ad infinitum, or at the border of the Earth's atmosphere, which that's kind of hazy, but, it goes up and down. But then what about air pollution? Or what about a stream that runs through your property and also goes through others? What if somebody's polluting upstream? Do you have a legit grievance against them under the nap? And, I mean, those are more complicated issues, and it's not always so clear-cut and straightforward.
Right.
So, I don't know. I mean, maybe the couple that's fucking in their bay window on the first floor apartment on a busy that's right on a busy sidewalk is kind of like the polluter that's polluting up the street. I don't know. I mean, could you get a solution that would make you not look at it? You might have to experience it one or two times before you start to think about that. Okay, don't look in that window, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's, so much. The hard part with a lot of these questions is that in our conventional society that we live in, like, there's rules that just don't make sense and are actually antithetical, I think, to the human condition.
Like what?
Well, I think that sex is in any way seen as, like, potentially repugnant. Like,
that makes total sense. Because it's called rape.
Well,
because
okay.
people experience sexual trauma.
Yeah, that's repugnant. But I'm talking about people just having sex. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. But if you've experienced sexual trauma, you're not going to necessarily view all sex through a very
well,
nice,
that's one of the problems with conventional
lens.
Society is that those things happen. I mean, and I mean, that's a really, really serious issue. I'm not downplaying that at all. But I mean, we have the problem of where, just in movies, and everybody knows this, violence, blowing people up and all this shit, nobody bats an eye. That should be breaking the nap. Like, why the hell do I have to see people getting blown to bits?
Right.
Or whatever, whatever the fuck's going on.
Sure.
And yeah, you don't have to watch the movie. I understand that. Okay. But maybe you're walking down, what if you're walking down Times Square back in the day and you had all, JVC had all their TVs, lined up and you're watching Rambo. I don't know, like exactly how that works.
Yeah, exactly. I can see the hypocrisy. And yes, in general, people are prudes, but there's a few people who, they can be prudes because they've experienced traumatic circumstances, and that's a shame, and we need to stop those traumas from happening.
Yeah.
And hopefully that's what we can evolve into, is not doing violence to one another and traumatizing each other.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, no, I'm not meaning to be, like, in any way insensitive to what happens to those people, but I think, we really do have a problem where sexuality is not celebrated. And, I mean, and I think a lot of issues kind of stem from that, and a lot of complexities stem from that. So, but yes, of course, there are the cases where, yeah, rape, all that stuff. And look, and that's a huge problem. That's a big part of our culture. And people can hate the fact that I say that or not, but, all you got to do is go through a TSA line to find out that it's, rape is obviously not.
Low-key normalization of sexual assault.
Exactly. So, anyway, so your answer is that does, like, sex on someone else's property does break the nap?
Yes. If they don't see it, it's in the same way as trespassing, that it breaks the nap.
Very interesting.
If you leave stuff behind, like, for example, a used condom, or even some bodily fluids, or perhaps some germs, some STDs, then I would say it's akin to littering with biological waste.
Interesting. Okay. Well, there it is. So.
And if they do see you, then it's sexual assault, which is also a nap violation, in addition to your trespassing.
Right on. Okay.
What about you, Brian?
Oh, like,
final answer.
No, well, again, if I was going to, like, accept the nap as valid and holy, I agree with you completely. With what you said, I think or at least I think your assessment is very logical and it makes sense.
I'm very logical.
Oh, you are.
People don't give me credit for it, but I'm very logical.
I'll give you all the credit in the world you want, love. So, yeah, I mean, but this is really one of those questions where I think it becomes very clear that the nap is insufficient, inefficient, and it just does not resolve everything, in my opinion. Because there's so much that really, I mean, I think there is so, with love and relationships and everything, there's so much that has developed and socially evolved, not biologically, but socially evolved, that really is detrimental to human happiness. And that's that's really sad that that's happened. So
where do you go if you don't have a space of your own? If you don't have private property enough to have sex privately? Where do you go?
Well, I'll tell you, in the medieval times, back those wonderful holy times where people were God-fearing and all that, where they went?
Yeah, that's right.
They went to the church. And that's where they did it. And the priests knew it, and they didn't care. You know, I mean, like, that's, well, maybe they watched.
Priests were probably doing it too.
Yeah, who knows what terrible things they were doing. But regardless, like, yeah, you would actually go to public property to do it. So I guess go to Central Park. You know, if you have nowhere else to go, I don't know. Head to the park.
Yeah. I would say maybe we need some love hotels. Go to a hotel, motel. Go to your car, park it somewhere private. Go to a state park. Go camping.
Sure.
You know, maybe go to a friendly relative's house or a friend's house who is supportive of your goal to be alone and have some love time with your lover. And, you know, I'm sure people would donate spaces, you know, like use of their space for you to be able to have some love if that's what you wanted to do.
Definitely.
If you have some supportive friends or family.
I do want to say that, like, I think, and I've brought this up many times before on Patreon Q&A episodes and on Sovryn Tech Prime. I do think that in a anarchist or an ANCAP or a libertarian paradise, whatever term you want to use, I really do think there would still be public property.
Of course there would.
Yeah, I mean, there, like, that concept.
Comedy of the commons.
Yeah, it wouldn't be like a bunch of it wouldn't be like a bunch of people agreeing that, okay, no, we actually own all this, but we'll make it public or something. It would just if you bought into the NAP and if you bought into the concepts of private property, it would, by its very nature, would, come out of Lockean concepts of property, that there would be public property. There's the fishing hole example that a lot of people bring up.
What's the fishing hole example?
Fishing hole example is that if you had, if a bunch of people bought a house like around a pond, and it could be any body of water, but around a pond, and you all went fishing in that pond, and you all like walked, like, this is, not bringing up much in the way of technology here, okay? You walked in from your backyard, you made a clearing to that pond. All of you made a clearing to that pond. Nobody homesteaded it more than the other person because all it required was access to it, okay? And so, since everybody can kind of go back to it, that pond is effectively, that whole area is effectively public property because everybody effectively did equal work, kind of to get to that. So within that geographic area of these houses, that would be considered public property. And that's that's the fishing hole example of that.
I've heard some other ones that I find more compelling than that.
Sure. That's just a basic one. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
For example, like the idea of a marketplace or a bazaar or like a campground or whatever, where it's in every merchant's interest to get as many people there as possible because they'll all shop at the different stores.
Yeah.
And so you want to, they're all incentivized to open up a space where it's not like private property with the intention to keep people out, they're inviting people in. Or what about parking lots or plazas where there's a bunch of shops? Yeah, I mean, technically somebody may own those, but like anyone is welcome to come and park on the parking lot with the implicit assumption that at least some of those people are going to shop at those stores.
Yeah, I mean, when you bring up those kinds of like malls and that kind of example, like a lot of ANCAPs like to bring up saying that, well, statistically, malls that become more privately owned and centrally controlled are cleaner and better taken care of. There's better security and all this different stuff if it's not just some like wild morass and mess. And I mean, but I think your examples are perfectly sound, and I think that those statistics and a lot of that other stuff are ignoring a lot of aspects of that. But bottom line being, you're right. You would very naturally want to create public gathering places within geographic areas that everybody has like the freedom to get access to. I mean, one of the oldest ideas in human history is like the sanctuary city.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of these ideas of how to handle justice, human justice, and a lot of these other things, I mean, have been around for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. I mean, they are very ancient concepts. And to think that, just because, now we have Amazon or something, that, Amazon.com, that somehow everything is, humans operate under totally different auspices or something is kind of crazy. These are ideas that in many ways, like the commons, things like this, that I think people are trying to ignore, because there's people who have visions of authoritarianism, I think, in many ways, that lend to that. But these are just things that I think socially, naturally outcrop. They just happen when it comes to humans. And you can see it in more than humans. You can see it in other species that arguably are either sapient or close to sapience. Right down to octopeds. Is that how the term's pronounced now?
Octopods? I don't know.
No, I was corrected on this. Maybe it was octopedes. Anyway, but an octopus would develop these kind of public spaces. Like.
Wow.
It's arguable. There's Octopolis and Atlantis.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
There were cities built by octopods.
Right. And you had, and it's interesting because you're seeing very basic concepts of commons, and a lot of these other things, right within nature, outside of humanity. And I think that's worth exploring. Anyway, people will now email me with a ton of stories about the tragedy of the commons and how all this shit falls apart.
And how octopuses have private property. And
and blah, blah, blah. And okay, whatever. Send me the emails. I don't know what I'm going to do with them. And look, don't anybody confuse me. The basic concept of the NAP, don't aggress, don't initiate force or don't initiate aggression against others. I mean, I am totally on board with that. It's just, when it comes into some degree of application and things like that, that's where, I mean, you can look up on my YouTube channel. I have some videos about it where I go into much greater depth, but don't worry. I'm not I don't believe in fraud. I don't believe in, doing any of that kind of stuff. Just saying that, I have, NAP doesn't necessarily go far enough. So there we are. So, Stephanie, anyway, this is fascinating. I enjoyed the hell out of this.
Yeah.
I kind of wish I had another fun question, to end it on. But I can't think of one exactly.
Well, that's a good one, and we did a lot of content, so that was
yeah.
conversation.
This is a lot of stuff. So, all right. So, signing off from the car.
Beep beep.
Beep beep. I will see you, Stephanie. Of course, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you.
I imagine
us together on Sex and Science Hour.
That's right. Or of course, find Stephanie at smvoice.info. And thank you all to all of the patrons for making this you really are making this kind of content possible, right down to the equipment that I can acquire to make it happen and things like this. So really honored, and you afford me the time, and thank you so much for that. I will see you on the other side.